Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for July 23rd, 2024. In honor of Pie and Beer Day, also known as Pioneer Day, that's coming up tomorrow, our first article comes from dispatch.com. It's written by Samuel Benson, who also writes for the Deseret News. It says, every American should celebrate Pioneer Day. Most, I gather, have never heard of it. Consider this your invitation. On July 24th, while much of the country passes a regular Wednesday, we Utahns will take the day off. Some will celebrate much like they do on the other more well-known July holiday, parades, barbecues, fireworks. Others will find ways to honor or remember the first Latter-day Saint pioneers who entered the Salt Lake Valley on that date in 1847. I prefer to celebrate my ancestors, and I'd invite you to do the same. My ancestors were much like most other pioneers celebrated on this holiday. Many came from England or the eastern United States. They joined the fledgling Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints shortly after Joseph Smith declared himself a prophet and brought forth new scripture, the Book of Mormon. Most stuck around even after Smith was killed in 1844, and the Saints, then under the direction of Brigham Young, marched west. And some were there on that July day in 1847 when the first company entered a barren valley and declared the desert their Zion. Now that I'm learning more accurate histories about the colonization of the Americas, phrases like that last one always give me a little bit of pause for reconsideration. When I read, the first company entered a barren valley and declared the desert their Zion, I wondered if that was actually true. Was the valley really barren? I did a little research and found the following. First off, when the Mormon pioneers came to Utah, there were already people living there. Let's make that very clear. And the Deseret News says the following. In reality, say historians, the valley was well watered with tall grasses and trees along the many stream banks. Turns out that the idea of the Salt Lake Valley being barren until Brigham Young, directed by God, could come in and make it blossom like a rose is just another factually unsupported myth perpetuated by Mormons and handed down over the years. I was absolutely taught that Utah, before the Mormon pioneers got there, was uninhabitable and barren, and that Brigham Young, because he was directed by God, made it beautiful. Let's read a bit more from the Deseret News. One of the greatest myths of the church is that the valley was total desolation, said the late Dr. Stanley Kimball, a Utah historian. No pioneer diary accounts he ever found supported the desolate valley idea. However, most of the paintings depicting the valley when the Mormon pioneers arrived look more like the West Desert area than the Wasatch Front. But many diary accounts support that the Salt Lake Valley was more green than history paintings illustrate. William Clayton's journal for July 22, 1847, records his first view of the Salt Lake Valley and comments on the land between the mountains and the Great Salt Lake. The intervening valley appears to be well supplied with streams, creeks, and lakes. Some of the latter are evidently salt. There is but little timber in sight anywhere, and that is mostly on the banks of streams and creeks of water, which is almost the only objection which could be raised, in my estimation, to this being one of the most beautiful valleys and pleasant places for a home for the saints which could be found. Personally, I'm going to continue to be skeptical about stories and myths handed down to me as facts during my years as an active Mormon. It's quite strange to me that Mr. Sam Benson, who writes for the Deseret News, seemingly did not know that his article in the Dispatch would contradict an article in the other paper that he writes for. Next up, a post from Reddit entitled, "My son had his first I can't hang out with you because you don't go to church experience. My 12-year-old son picked up the drums and guitar this year. He and a few friends are starting their first band and needed a place to practice. We have enough space in our garage, so I told him his friends could practice at our place. I was in a band back in the day, and it was so much fun. Of course, I want him to have the same experience. I left him and his buddies to practice, not wanting to be the geeky, hello, fellow youth's dad. After they were done, he said one of his friends can't come to our house. Why not? He read me the text where his friend said, my parents asked if you go to church, and when I said no, they told me I can't go to your house. I got pissed, but my son, who is basically never mowed due to how young he was when I left, just shrugged and said, his loss, he's out of the band. Proud of my son's outlook, but still pissed. Can you imagine if the situation were the other way around? My dad said I can't go to your house because you belong to a gerontocratic polygamist sex cult. I have to say that living in Texas, the experience has been much the same. If my kids are at school and say anything about not believing in God, they get a lot of pushback. They get picked on quite a bit because of it, and there are kids who are not allowed to come to our house because we don't believe in God. And now from Newsweek, as Americans sit in the crosshairs of a cost of living crisis and career stability becomes increasingly precarious, looking at which states boast the largest families gives an intriguing insight into household dynamics and economic confidence across the U.S. Drawing on data from U.S. Census Bureau, World Population Review has compiled a ranking of states based on family size. At the low end sit the northeastern states of New Hampshire with an average family size of 2.94 people. Vermont at 2.83, and Maine at 2.82, all well below the national average of 3.21. Conversely, Hawaii 3.50 and California 3.52 are more prolific, with Utah standing out as the state with the largest families in the U.S., averaging 3.58 people. Bethany Cole of Utah Tech's Applied Sociology Department spoke to Newsweek about the reasons behind Utah's sizable households and said that there were religious, economic, cultural, and policy factors at play in the state taking the first spot. Regarding the former, Gold said two of Utah's dominant religions, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Catholicism, are notably pro-natalist. When I went to get my routine 20-week ultrasound when I was pregnant with my fifth, I lived in Alaska at the time, and the ultrasound tech asked if it was my first baby, and I said, no, it's my fifth. To which she responded, are you Catholic or Mormon? And I said Mormon, and then she expressed disappointment by saying, oh, I was really hoping you were going to say Catholic. I'm sure that was fairly unprofessional of her, but I did not take offense, and I just laughed, and now it makes a good story. The article goes on to say, according to the Pew Research Center, 55% of adults in Utah are Mormon, 7% Protestant, and 5% Catholic. According to Goal, Mormon families have more children than the national average, 2.4 compared to 1.7. It seems that members of the Mormon Church are still listening to the brethren when they say, don't delay, have children right away, and have as many as you can. I come from a family of 14 children, so I know what that looks like. And I also have 6 of my own. And last up to date from religionnews.com, the Mormon Satan used to command worlds and control a third of the host of heaven. LDS Theology, both official and unofficial, credited him with having power over the water, possessing people's souls and bodies, and marshaling demons and other foul spirits to carry out his will. He was mighty, fearsome. His domain was the entire planet and all its seats of power. What the heck happened to him? Now he's become that voice of chronic self-doubt in your head, telling you that you're not good enough, and hey, you really ought to eat that second brownie. Poor Satan, or rather I should say poor adversary, because that's the preferred term we have gravitated toward. As Christian Anderson's graph of the last half century of General Conference language shows, in the 1970s, adversary in green was rare, dwarfed by names like Satan in black and the devil in red. Over time, its usage has mushroomed until adversary has become the most popular term. That shift in language reflects a larger move in theological focus. Recent emphasis from church leaders shows Satan as the great and terrible spoiler of self-improvement projects. Here is a sampling of some General Conference talks within the last decade or so that give us hints as to Satan's evolving job description. He seeks to limit your earthly and heavenly potential by employing tools like deception, distraction, and discouragement. He will be relentless in his attempts to erode your personal spiritual foundation. He will attack your self-esteem and make you feel you're not good enough. He will distract you from your spiritual path and create so much noise that it can be difficult to hear the Lord's voice. He is pleased when parents neglect to teach and train their children to have faith in Christ and be spiritually born again. He tries to weaken faith and instill disbelief in your heart. He takes every opportunity to fill your mind with images of violence and immorality. He instills feelings of fear that prevent you from doing missionary work. He's ready to pounce and establish a foothold in your homes if you fail to study the scriptures together as a family, and he will perpetuate a very real sense of panic that undermines your ability to see yourself and your family members with an eternal lens. What all of those have in common is an inward therapeutic turn toward the self. The adversary now exists to bring individual adversity. In fact, congratulations! He will tailor-make such adversity for each person. He thrives on building hyper-personalized obstacle courses that will trip us up. In the past, Satan was depicted as both an individual tempter and a cosmic force that could control the elements of nature and bring down whole nations. Today, he's not both and. so much as either or. We don't speak of him exerting physical power over this world, or of seeking to sabotage anything larger than our very own personal spiritual journey. Satan is primarily concerned with disrupting individual happiness and success in the gospel. When he does venture into broader social issues, those issues are, surprise, surprise, the very same ones LDS church leaders are also concerned about, especially non-binary gender identity and the weakening of social commitments to marriage and childbearing. What a sad and sorry downfall Satan has had. Let's all take a moment to extend the guy some sympathy. He's the one sitting over there at the French cafe, smoking cigarettes and wrestling with the kind of ennui that it's now his sole raison d'etre to inflict upon you. Right now, he's telling the other cafe patrons and, well, anyone who will listen, that he used to be great. He could have been a contender. I too feel bad for the guy. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.